all coming from my book, A Gracious Space. I'm Julie Bogart from Brave Writer. This is the Brave Writer Facebook page where we talk about homeschooling, parenting, taking good care of ourselves and the people entrusted to our charge. And yes, we talk about writing. We also talk about learning how to teach our kids to write. Today, we are focused on the relationship, and there's a reason. You can only teach children if the relationship is good. People learn when they're happy. And when they're not happy, they're learning stuff you didn't want them to learn, like she's not trustworthy, he's mean. So what we're really working on all the time is building a safe space for learning risks to take place. That is the objective of home education. It should be the objective of all education. But we brought our kids home, and the reason we did that on many levels is for that exact reason. To make it a good place, a safe place, to take academic risks, to take personal passion risks, to explore this big, beautiful world with someone whose primary enthusiasm is them. And that's what mothers are. That's what fathers are. So welcome this morning. Let's read. Today is day 24. Can you believe it? We've done this 24 days. In fact, I'm going to have a sip of my tea. Before we get going, my voice is still kind of froggy. I was re-listening to yesterday's, Facebook Live. I just sometimes like to get a feel for where your comments happen during my talk, because I'll read them later and I'll be like, I wonder what she was reacting to. So I'll listen and try and get that context. But as I was listening, I was like, gall, my voice in the morning is like me. I really, so thanks for putting up with my voice. So today is day 24. And the title, It's the Relationship, Sweetheart. When you're tempted to get worked up about algebra, breathe. Remind yourself, my daughter and I can tackle algebra more easily if we like each other. When your son spills the Cheerios right after you told him to wait for you, hold back. Let the lava flow of irritation run through you. But don't spill it onto his little head. Remember, he won't always spill Cheerios, but he will be grateful that I'm not the type to lose my cool. When you can't squeeze another chapter into the end of the year, and you're disappointed in yourself for not being more disciplined, let go. Notice, my children like me. I like them. I can let that be enough, because it is. When heartbreak threatens to steal your memories, when you don't know how to get to the next space because it's unfamiliar and riddled with loss, hold on. Tell yourself, I will be okay because I love and am loved. I'll get to the other side by loving, not by fearing. When one of your children doesn't like you right now, trust. This too shall pass. My love and like are big enough for the both of us. I can let my natural devotion and affection lead me, not my resentment, nor my anxiety, nor my anger. When you imagine your children in the future, what do you see? Inside jokes, vacations at the beach, memories of outings taken and books read, big hugging reunions, foods to share and games to play? Pay attention. These start now. I can do them now. I will value them now. In the end, the book learning will come sometimes quickly and ahead of schedule, sometimes in college, sometimes not until one of your children decides to home educate his or her own offspring. What can never be scheduled or studied, crammed or tested, is love. Homeschooling is a performance of love between family members over a sustained, daily, intimate period of years, led by a parent who puts relationship ahead of the books. Check in with yourself today. Be present to your children and love one another. Quote of the day, beautiful. Sent with a renewed and thankful heart, Jeanette Weiler. Sustaining thought, it's all about love, and love is enough to sustain everything else. back in elections a long time ago, Bill Clinton said, "It's the economy, stupid." And that probably won him the election. This morning, I want you to think about the title of this chapter, because I think at the time that I wrote it, that was the mental riff. It's the relationship, sweetheart. It's the relationship. At the core of who you are and what you're doing with your kids. It's about that. And that relationship goes through so many adjustments and alterations. But all of it is because of love. Honestly, even when you yell at your kids, it's underlined with love. It's anxiety, fear, a desire to protect, a frustration that they aren't who you have been shaping and grooming them to be yet, right? Even the 5-year-old with the Cheerios, even that little guy that you unload on. Part of it is, I thought that we knew by now that when I asked you to wait, you would wait, right? It's like a violation of that unspoken agreement that we're going to play by the same rules to make sure that this operation keeps running smoothly. So when they don't, it's not anger in the pure sense, like outrage. It's not political outrage. It's frustration. It's irritation that this agreement you've got going somehow was violated inadvertently by immaturity, by a desire to be independent, by not really paying attention, whatever that agenda is of the child's. And it's always forgivable. For heaven's sakes, I know mothers who've forgiven their children for being in prison. You know, spilled Cheerios is a small thing, right? Because mothers have a heart for who that child is, the isness of the person, not the behavior. We know who our kids are. They grew inside of us, or we traveled oceans to go get them, or we signed up for years of, scrutiny to adopt a child. Like, mothers have a deep connection to the isness of that person. They wouldn't do it otherwise. They wouldn't. And so your anger and frustration is the feeling sometimes that you don't have the level of control that you want to have to bring about all those amazing, precious results that live in your fantasy life. One mom says, Melanie says, I need this morning, trying to find the balance between homeschooling, starting my own business, and being a wife and mom. Well, I'm here to tell you that's a tricky balance, but totally doable. Totally doable. It will mean that you're not as good at all of them at once. Things go in seasons. So if you're launching a business and trying to homeschool and do the quote wife and mother thing, some of those are going to need to take a back seat. Maybe you just aren't quite as into date night as you used to be because your mind is preoccupied thinking about working on the business. Well, you know what? Your spouse is a grown-up. He can handle that better than you checking out on the young ones who really still need attention. So you want to think about who has the need, how you can allocate your energy, and let everybody know what season you're in. When I was in grad school, that was a pretty big commitment in addition to homeschool and a business. But grad school was really important to me. So a program that normally takes 2 years full-time took me 4 years with one summer school. And that was fine. Took one class at a time. There was only one semester that I took 2 classes, and that was really hard, and we decided not to do that again. So you can pace yourself. You can live into your dream. I was talking with all these small business owners, those 2 days this week, and realizing that by the time most of them were 55, they were on the tail end of business. Not everybody starts a business 17 years ago and is only now really ramping up. But I wanted to be home. I allocated my energy toward my children. I didn't travel conference to conference to conference. I turned down speaking engagements. I didn't deliberately advertise. I let word of mouth allow me to grow at this pace that was corresponding with my ability to homeschool and go to lacrosse games. If you have the luxury of that, if your income from your business is for, helping out, not paying the mortgage, you can live that way. And I remember when my income went from helping out to paying the mortgage. And that was a significant shift in my own feelings about my life. It was a burden, it was a responsibility, it was a moment. I even turned to my spouse at the time and said, "Thank you for carrying that burden for the last 15 years. I had no idea what that felt like," because it creates a different pressure. So anytime you're taking on these additional aspects of your womanhood or your manhood, if you're a man listening along, anytime you increase your responsibility, it does make something else pay a kind of price. And you have to be honest about that with yourself and with everyone. And you have to choose wisely. Sometimes your balance will be out of whack. Hopefully it'll be temporary. You know, when I had a big thesis to write in grad school, that was a very different level of responsibility than just attending class one night a week, reading the readings and writing some papers. That I could really manage. But when it came down to writing that final paper, 50-page paper, I had to dedicate some time. It took research, it took writing, it took revision, it took meeting with advisors. And so when we saw that season coming, I had to think differently about everything. And then sometimes your life is, impacted by what you didn't plan. And we've talked a lot about that this week. And when those things come, again, creative solutions, putting a priority on the relationships, making sure that all the people in your sphere are on board. I've watched families make really interesting choices based on chaos. It's so much better if you can make them based on consciousness. You know, they'll suddenly implode. A mother will just be at her wit's end and suddenly everyone is just thrown into school because she let it build up too long and had lost touch with who she was and didn't know that she was building up all this resentment and suddenly couldn't homeschool anymore. So that's not good. Paying attention to the relationships means paying attention to everyone's energy levels for what you're doing. So when you're looking at this landscape of children and developing empathy for them, let's not forget the primary relationship that keeps all this going. Your relationship with yourself. Can you forgive yourself for wanting to have something else to do than read and do math? Can you forgive yourself for having aspirations as an adult? A career aspiration, a hobby aspiration, a travel aspiration. It's okay to find yourself spreading peanut butter and daydreaming about when you're not spreading peanut butter. That is part of adulthood. That's part of the imagination that will drive you forward and lead you after this season is over. It's just that when you're in this season, you also want to be in this season. It's really important to homeschool when you commit to homeschooling. I'm a big believer in that. I'm a believer in being home, actually doing the stuff that you said you wanted to do with your kids. And there's no shame if you stop wanting to do it. If that changes, pay attention. Because the most important thing is that connection to your kids. And I'm here to tell you, there are some public school parents that have profound, powerful relationships with their children who are all in. You know, they lead the choir committee and they show up and do makeup before plays and they visit their kids when they're at their special marching band camps and go on the amazing field trips with all of their friends. That's possible. It's possible. You can be an all-in parent and have a child in school. So homeschooling is something else. It's this desire to be all in and present throughout the day and to have that joy of the magical aha moment that comes when you are educating your own child. That's why we do it. We do it because we want to see them take that first step into academic thinking, just like we watch them take that first step walking across the kitchen floor. It's this seduction of education. It's the joy of participating in the learning at a very intentional, responsible level. And I know you feel the weight of that responsibility. That's one of the challenges of this experience. Let's see here. I need to learn to ask for help. I am in a busy month for my home business, but still trying really hard to focus on my homeschooling son. So one of the things I did when I was a freelancer back before Brave Writer, I was working. I used to ghostwrite and I ran a magazine and I did book editing. I did dissertation editing. Guys who were trying to get their dissertations passed with their, doctoral review board. I would help them write them. These were really fun projects for me, and they helped me a lot with my own sense of worth in the world in addition to homeschooling. So I hired someone who came in one day a week in the afternoon, usually from 4 to 6 p.m. So homeschooling was done, and I worked from 4 to 6 p.m. And the mother's helper was downstairs and I was upstairs, so that if my 2-year-old really lost it, I was there. And I could hire someone who was a homeschool girl. She was like 12 or 13. I would never wish 5 children on a 13-year-old if I wasn't physically in the house. So I was upstairs, everybody's safe, and she's just playing games, and there's a nice snack, and they go for a little walk, and I'm typing. And that's what I did. And it was working. But I wasn't trying to cram and tuck that in around all the edges. I might sometimes work after they were in bed or early in the morning, but I had this dedicated 2-hour time slot. And I sort of had this idea with myself that if I couldn't get it done then, I had bitten off too much. So the quantity of work I did was very proportionate to what I could handle as a home educator. Does that make sense? And there were moments when that was out of whack. I'm not saying that you won't have a busy season. You know, sometimes the season gets away with you, or your ego gets flattered and you sort of chase after the satisfaction that comes from being recognized and invited and told that you're really doing a great job. And so growth becomes this obsession. But you'll know when that's happening, you know, because your kids are going to tell you. They're going to miss you. They're going to act up and try and get you back over into their lives. And when that's going on, that's when you have to start paying attention again. Because we don't want their memory to be, my mom was a home educator who was never home educating. She was more interested in her homeschooling business than she was in home educating me, right? Like I knew that on some level, that if my children were going to have a successful home educating life, I couldn't be going around saying, well, I'm a homeschooling business and I don't know how they're doing in homeschool. Like I wanted to actually live that life. And believe me, it's no shame if you don't want to. You don't have to do this. This is volitional. It's also okay. I know a lot of homeschool businesses that are run by men and the wives do the homeschooling. And that seems to work for a lot of them. So maybe if you're the big homeschooling business, your husband can homeschool the kids. You know, like that was why I didn't do it. I was the homeschooler and the home business. You know, that's why there aren't a lot of women who run big, huge companies, because they were deciding that they were homeschooling. They weren't just teaching about it, right? So you've got to think these things through. And your home business might have nothing to do with homeschool. It might have to do with, you know, reselling makeup or being a cabbie designer or one of those, you know, other kinds of businesses. And maybe it's ramping up, or maybe your heavy season is between November and December when people are shopping retail. So prepare for that. Maybe that's when you take your 2-month break and you actually homeschool through the summer, you know? And you use November and December to really go all in, and you invite your kids along if they want to, you know, if they want to participate. There's a lot of space for flexibility. Homeschooling affords it to you. You want to be creative, you want to pay attention to your children, and you want to make sure that you're protecting the relationships. Dixie says, I have a hard time connecting with my son, the one with ADHD. I love him so much, but lose my patience with him and see that I need to heal our relationship before we can move on. So you can always start with that very sentence. I lose my patience with you. That must be so painful. I'm so sorry I do that. That's just so immature of me. Here I am, the adult. I should know better, and I don't. I want to explore how we can work through a couple things that seem to be our stumbling blocks, and then bring up what they are. Bring up what they are and brainstorm and think of new pathways to reconnect. And then, of course, go see a movie with him. Take him out alone and go see, you know, a big comic Marvel movie, and then go get root beer floats and just hang out. That's what's missing. We're so busy managing and teaching and training and explaining and building character. Oh, so exhausting to build character. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I'm like, they're going to get the character they get. We're going to work on liking each other. We're going to work on being friends with each other. They'll figure out their own character by hanging around me and their dad and the people they admire. But what they can get from me that they can't get from anyone else is a mother's love. That's the one thing they need that they can't get from anyone else. Think about your parents right now, right? Like you're in your 30s and 40s and you've got parents. What's the one thing you want from them? You want them to be proud of you. You want them to value your choices. You want them to be curious about your life. Can't you do all those for your kids right now while they're living with you? That's what creates the foundation for your homeschool. Curiosity, interest, admiration. Give those to your children. Give those to your children. That's what love feels like. Not, I'm helping you build your character by making sure you never lie. Oh gosh. Let's just talk about that for a moment. You know, if your child lies to you, you know why, don't you? Because they love you. Did you know that's why they lie? They're protecting their image because they want you to still admire them. They are hiding something so they won't lose value in your eyes. They're not lying because they're a heinous criminal or are on a path to prison. They're lying because they don't want you to have a diminished view of them. If you can flip the script on how you see lying, you can move right in with love, especially when they're little. Those lies are usually worthless anyway. Nope, I didn't spill the Cheerios. We had this big joke with Katrin because she would never own up to anything that she clearly did. Youngest of 5, never owned up. And it's kind of carried into adulthood as a joke because it was such an intense resistance to ever admitting anything. And there was one day when I realized she's the youngest of 7 people. What pressure to live up to maturity, high standards. She had 6 parents. All the older siblings were constantly telling her their expectations and what to do and how to behave and what they needed from her. And of course, she couldn't possibly manage the weight of 6 people's expectations of her and their ideas of what it meant to be a grown-up girl at age 4 and 7 and 12. And so she never wanted to feel like she was losing ground by having done something she shouldn't have done. So she lied about it. She pretended it didn't happen, that it wasn't her. And I learned at a certain point, oh, it doesn't matter. I don't have to prove to her that she's hiding anything. I have to love the her that's hiding something. I have to reach in and let Katrin be okay and love her right now in this panicky feeling that she's losing value in the family because she did something that everyone wants to nail her for. That's what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about the relationship, it's remembering the meta message. What is it that's really being communicated here? It's not a character flaw. It's people trying really hard to meet their own needs and still be admired by the other people in the room. So they go underground. They do something they're, quote, not supposed to because it's meeting some need they have. But they know that if you knew that this was what the need was that they had, you might look down on them. You might be disappointed in them. You might criticize them. So it goes underground, you know? It goes underground. We've all seen it, right? Like, you know, from watching television or watching a movie, like there will be some, you know, tragic Hallmark story of a child who's struggling with their weight. And the mother is constantly looking down on that child. And then it becomes this whole thing. She's lying. She's sneaking food. She's not telling the truth. Well, it's not about the truth. This is somebody struggling with something and solving it through eating and gaining weight. And it's embarrassing to admit that you are in that loop and in that struggle. So we lie to cover that up. It's not about a character flaw. And if we could start looking at our children not as exhibiting character flaws, but as protecting themselves from scrutiny, disapproval, feeling disconnected from you, then we start to get at the underlying issue. You know, why isn't my son doing his co-op algebra homework? Why is he copying the answers from the back of the book behind my back and pretending that they're his answers? Not, I can't believe you're doing this. How will you function in a company? If you're lying and cooking the books, they will fire you. Like, how does that help? It doesn't. And you're not preventing that from happening by having that lecture with your child. But if you discover it, you can be like, wow, you must really not want to be in this class. There must be something about this class that's so unappealing to you. You were risking getting caught cheating on all the homework. Like, that's impressive. We need to talk more about this. For now, let's just stop algebra, because it's apparent to me now that you're not interested in it. And I think it's not good for you. Like that. Like actually getting to the truth. The truth isn't what presents. The truth is under what presents. And it's your job as the Sherlock Holmes of the family to figure out what's underneath it. Does it mean that they sometimes do bad, irrational things that you are shocked at? Of course. They're immature. You know, we know now that this part of the brain isn't even fully developed until they're 24 or 25. So yeah, they're going to make some irrational, to your mind, decisions. Didn't you? Can you think back to the things you did that were a little irrational? Have some compassion. This is what we do as we're growing up. We have poor judgment. But that doesn't mean that we crucify them or worry that their character is being poorly formed. Their character will be formed in direct relationship to how secure they feel in their primary relationship with you and their dad, or if you're the dad and the mom. So the mom and the dad, those are the two. I mean, when you go to therapy, what's the first thing you work on? What was your relationship with your parents? Well, hello, you're a parent. Work on it now. Work on that now. Be there now. Be open and willing to see differently now. You know, when my mom went through a divorce, she was emotionally checked out for a little while, maybe about 5 years of my life. And we had been very close. And that was a loss for me. I was in college. I didn't have a home to go to. I spent all of the Christmas, summer breaks in my apartment. And I would just go visit my mom's apartment for, a couple of days out of a couple month period. I was really suddenly alone and grown up. And I resented that. And yet while I was in it, I was so busy surviving that I didn't really think about it in those ways. And I felt a responsibility to take care of my mom emotionally because she was going through a lot. And the boomerang effect of those years hit me in my late 20s and early 30s. Suddenly, I had a lot of anger that I had not ever paid attention to. And it caused a rift in our relationship temporarily. During that time, I was seeing a therapist, and my mom was in her own city. And we went through a period where we didn't talk for about 6 weeks, and I was getting ready to have a baby, Jacob. And she was going to come to the birth, but we were suddenly not talking, which was just like heartbreaking. And you all know, if you know anything about my mom, she's awesome. She's awesome, awesome, awesome. We are so close. So she reached out to me in a consistent way during that time, gave me the benefit of the doubt, sent me a card that said, I know I haven't heard from you, but I want you to know I love you. And that card just literally cut me to the heart. So I finally reached back out, and she said, if you need me to come to a therapy session with you, I will. And she did. And I told her how it was for me, and she took it. God, I'm going to cry. I haven't thought about this in years. And when it was done, this is the gift she gave me. She said, okay, let me get it back together, because this is really important. She said to me, for the rest of your life, there will be effects from this divorce on how you feel about your family, about your life. And as long as I'm still alive, I'm here to hear your feelings and to hold space for them. That's it. There's no expiration date on that. She didn't say, phew, we did therapy, now can we get on with it? Don't bring that up again. She was like, no, I'm here. And I know that this has a ripple effect. And there's no way when you do something as big as a divorce that you can anticipate the times when it'll be painful for your child, because they're going to go get married and have children, and they're going to have a ping back, which is what would happen to me. I'd have a baby, or I'd have an event, and I'd be like, oh, I have divorced parents. There's a ping back to the pain. It's a trigger. And she decided to create space for me to bring that feeling to her when it occurred. That's a good relationship. And to tell you the truth, I haven't had to do it very often. Just knowing that space exists creates so much freedom in our relationship, so much openness. You know, she's the person I call when stuff is tough because I'll never be judged. She'll always give me support, and she gives me fantastic insight and validates the insight I have, helps me find my way, gives me the support where I can make a decision and move out safely into the world. That's what mothers do, or can do, or I hope do. And that's what you're building right now. That's very important in your homeschool. Yeah. And of course, there's room for doing it wrong. You see that, right? My mom, when she had to rescue herself, checked out. That was the right decision, even though it was costly to me. It was the right decision. She could not both be the kind of mother I wanted and needed and deal with the aftermath of a massive disillusionment, breakup, financial disaster, all the things that divorce were in her life. That happens. There will be seasons where you cannot be as present as you think you should be. And that's just life. And children can recover from that. But they recover from it because you openly acknowledge it. So if you're in one of those seasons right now, you can acknowledge that this is a tough season for us. You're not getting as much of me as you deserve. It's okay to say that. Tiffany says she also comes from a divorced family and has pledged to just always be there for my kids in ways I don't think my mom knew I needed her. We are still best friends. Yeah, so everyone makes decisions about their parenting out of reaction. At the summer retreat for Brave Writer, we had a talk called The Invisible Education. And the first thing I had everyone do is free write about what it felt like to live in their own family, their memory of their parents, their memory of what their homes felt like. Because that's what you're reacting to. You're either trying to recreate it because it was so good, and now you're in this new situation with this spouse and your own set of children and your own needs, and you're trying to recreate that, or you're reacting against it. What you thought didn't work, what you thought was wrong with your family. And those things can sort of like, they can wrench you. They can make you not see the reality of your own family because you are so busy reacting. So getting some sense of what you come from and where you are now and how much of what you're doing is a reaction will help you with the scale of things, right? You can't, as we've explained and explored this week, you can't prevent tragedy or difficulty or challenge from coming into your life. And homeschooling is no inoculation against all of those things. It's just a tool for educating. It's a tool for educating. Devalue it a little bit. You know, take it off the pedestal. It just is what it is. It's just homeschooling. And you can start to get a feel for what you want the family culture to be. That's your job. The education is just a part of that. Vicky misses her mom so much. You know, I'm so sorry that your mom isn't there for you. And I'm so sorry for those of you who've lost your moms at a young age, because mine has been a huge resource for me. And so I hope that you can find women in your life who are a little further down the road that can be there for you. You know, one of the benefits of this medium, Facebook Live, Periscope, is it's wonderful for me in this stage of my life to be able to shout back, you know, down the tunnel, sort of like the tin can back to all of you with your string and your tin cans, and to share with you what I've gotten from my mom and what I have in my life. But I know that's not the same as, you know, flesh on hugs. So if you can find women in your community or in your life, or borrow your mother-in-law or your aunt. I had a phenomenal aunt when my mom was somewhat checked out. And that aunt and I have been close for my whole adult life. And she is as much a wonderful mother role figure in my life as my own mother. So if you can find an aunt or a woman in your community, just someone to get that sort of senior wisdom and hug, I do recommend it. And there are women who would love to give that to you. There are. I'm going to read some of these. Mary says, I think we are often hardest on our kids when we see our own flaws in them. That's tough. Oh, yes. Or the mistakes we already made. You know, it's like, oh, I made that mistake. I don't want her going down that same path. I don't want him going down that path. I already know the outcome of that path. That's so true. So easy to be worried about that. Also, too, if you had kind of a rough ride in high school, parents who had a rough ride in high school, you know, did a lot of things that they're embarrassed to admit they did, or made choices that they still regret to this day. Some of that homeschooling idealism is all about preventing that, right? But your kids are going to make their own decisions and choices about other things, and you can't control all of that. My therapist has this thing he always says: whenever you're sort of baffled by what the other person does, pause and just go, more information. More information. You don't have to make a decision on the fly. It's just more information for you to consider about that child. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you come downstairs and your son is on the computer and he's on a website you weren't really expecting him to be on, you don't need to freak out. He's a boy, he's on the web, he's doing something that a lot of boys have done on the web. You can take it as more information. Maybe there was a conversation you never had during his sort of run-up to adolescence. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to talk. You can do that. You don't have to freak out. More information. Oh, this is more information for me to think about my child. You don't ever have to act on anything in your anger or in the moment. You can come back anytime to anything. You can find out that one child, you know, has been cleaning out the change jar to, you know, buy stuff that you didn't know about, whatever that is. And the moment you find it out, you can take a week before you address it. You can mull it over, you can talk to your friends, you can talk to your spouse, and a week later you can say, you know what? I think this is what's going on, and I think we need to have a conversation about it. That's so different than freaking out. Just go, information. I just got more information about my child. Thank goodness I got the information, because now I can do something with it. Now I can work with it like a taffy pull, you know, just stretch it apart, look at it from a whole bunch of different angles, and think about my response like that. Make sense? It's awesome. Yeah, Heather says, telling myself feelings aren't emergencies has helped me step back and not just react. Wow, powerful. Fantastic. Or just leave a note in the jar, Wendy says. Yeah, we're reading in the Homeschool Alliance right now, this book, Siblings Without Rivalry. It's a fabulous book. Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. I'll try and put the title in the comments because it's backwards. They also wrote a book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. Both of those books give you so many alternatives to reaction. And one of them is writing things down. Like one of my favorites is, let's say your kid is always leaving a wet towel on the floor of the bathroom, don't they all? And you're sick of saying, hey, hang up the towel. So maybe next time, before they get out of the shower, you just fly a little paper airplane into the bathroom that says, don't forget to hang up the towel, right? And there's no energy on it. It's just expressed. It's not now these two personalities, egos. It's not a contest of wills. It's just a reminder. And there are so many ways to do that. And these books give you so many brilliant ideas. Some that I took, some that I forgot to take, some that I'm rereading going, oh, I could do that right now. It's not too late to employ some of these strategies with my own family. Yeah. All right. Time to go. Good morning to all of you. I hope you have a fantastic day. So we're going to close. Live honestly, write bravely, love compassionately. I'm Julie Bogart from Brave Writer. See you.